Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Dominic. I'm an MLTI ambassador, and I am coming to you here from home in my former nursery. That's the clouds behind me. But I like the brightness and the eternal hope for spring that it brings. So it's enjoyable to have in the room. We are going to be talking in this PD series about effective technology integration. So the whole goal here is to be able to inform you about the impact of technology and then improve on integration strategies through discussion and the strategies that we're going to talk about. um, this first topic is the overall impact of technology that it has when we integrate it in classrooms. Then after this one, we're going to dig into some of the common strategies like TPAC and SAMR. There's some additional strategies to note that I want to point out. Then we'll talk about being able to combine these strategies for your own doing. What are the best parts of them? How could we kind of sum them all up? Whereas, in topics 2 and 3, we're just going to talk about them and not really evaluate them necessarily, just describe what they have. Topic 4, we'll actually evaluate and take the best parts. Topic 5, we're going to get into technology selection. Okay, so what are some resources out there that you could select to integrate into your classrooms that would satisfy these strategies that we talked about? And then if not, if they don't have built-in features to it, then how can you use them with our best strategies to integrate them into your classroom, into your lessons? And then finally, our hope, the last topic, topic 6, week 6, where I'll bring us to be able to evaluate lessons with technology. We'll have some examples. You'll have some time to create your own, or at least start drafting your own. And then you can have that takeaway from this whole PD series. All right, so the first topic again today is just the overall impact of integrating technology. Um, we we talk about technology, and obviously it has a role in our classrooms, our everyday lessons. Right, there's no doubt about that for sure. Um, but I just wanted to be able to put some numbers to things, to actually have some data to back our talk up about how it's impacting and what we're seeing. So a lot of this may not be groundbreaking. Excuse me. It may not be groundbreaking. It may not be brand new concepts for you. That's not the whole point. The point of this one is to be able to just reinforce those pieces of information with some numbers, and then also kind of point out the whole reason for this PD series. Point out the flaws that happen with technology integration and why we want to look at the strategies and why we need to kind of look at them all and take the best parts instead of just taking one, or not understanding truly what they mean. So that's our goal today, is be able to have you just get to know that what's really going on out there and some data to support it. Okay, so very first, right? It's without a doubt, technology has certainly changed the landscape of education. Right, that is absolutely true. Um, Even though we can talk about it, with our anecdotes about how it's going on in the classroom, and we want to have some numbers to it. There actually isn't a whole bunch yet. It's still emerging, about exactly what effect does it have, besides just asking teachers, how do you feel it's working in the classroom, or how do your students feel it is, or how much do you use technology? Um, the actual data of our scores going up, how is that correlated, things like that, isn't developed quite yet to the degree that I want to be able to talk about it anyways. So we're going to stick with what we can, and that is just the anecdotal data. That is the surveys about how it's being used and what are the perceptions, because that's valuable too, right? There's a lot of value in that. The teachers and the students in the classroom feeling it every day. You know, you have to take that into consideration too, besides just the end result. So some interesting things to note here: 54% of school principals say they're already seeing positive academic outcomes from their use of digital content in their school. Right, engagement is the number one reason that teachers report how it's impacted their classroom. 7 in 10 schools reported that teachers use technology for activities that were normally done in the classroom, either a moderate or a large extent. Right, and then students in grades 3 through 12, 52% of those students say that their biggest reason for liking the technology integration is that they helps them develop creativity skills. Um, so again, some interesting things to point out, I thought. that overall 54% principals are saying that it is impacting their progress in a positive way. Um, routine things done in the classroom are is using they are using technology for that now. Um, and that I thought it's kind of interesting too that the students developing creativity was the students main reason. More than half of them just said that that's why they like the technology integration. And then of course the engagement piece, right? We're going to talk more about that later because I like the fact that that came up as number one. And all this data, most of this data came from the Project Tomorrow surveys. You can feel free to check them out. One of them, came from the NCES um, report that's in there. It's all linked, so you can check that out on your own as well. So, again, simply to point out the obvious, but it's all right. This is some current data. It is, I mean, from a few years ago, but it's current enough with technology. A small sample size. This isn't the statewide, a school or two only. But looking at this data, you can see, right, 88% of students reported that technology used almost daily. 78% said that it's used. The teacher said it's used almost daily. Again, things that we know, right? It's pretty obvious that's what would be happening. I am interested to see, what's the 3% that say that it's never used, and what are they defining as technology at that point? Not that you have to use technology to be good, right? That's not the case, but it's just just legitimately curious. When is technology never used in what setting? Um, yeah, I don't know. Just for curiosity reasons, what does that look like? All right, here's some simple data about the state, just to point out to you for Maine. All right, um, what's popular in the state versus what's not. iPads are coming in at a little over 400 um, for all grades. Sorry, how many schools are using it? Sorry, students are using it. Um, Windows devices are low. Not schools. Yep, Windows devices are low. Right. Um, Chrome laptops, over 500 schools are using it, being the most popular. MacBooks Air, whatever variation of them, Mac OS, a little under 400, and then another, which is being your own device type category, is obviously the lowest. So again, just interesting to see how it's laid out. What Maine looks like. It follows the overall trend of the nation, where Chrome operating system is has the majority of the education market, anyways. Um, so that's what we have there. Another way to look at it too is how is it used across the grade levels. This is popularity of what percent of the schools are using it, and at what grade level. So, which again makes sense. Nothing groundbreaking here. Makes sense. iPads, they start off really high in pre-K and kindergarten. Um, with a vast majority, and they drop significantly starting approaching second grade and then down into third grade. um, and then you almost got an inverse relationship there with Chromebooks coming up right a little bit towards the beginning, and then they rise in popularity as it goes on, and that makes total sense, right? iPads and touch screens are easier for little kids, and then as you become more productive with the device, you can use something that has a keyboard and type and use a trackpad and things like that, where the Chromebooks come in. As Chromebooks take off, then in our 7th and 8th middle school setting, they drop significantly because the MacBooks take over. And again, that's almost exact inverse. As you can see, it's mirrored right there. But obviously, I mean, in Maine, that's skewed because of the original, Macintosh contracts of the middle school MLTI program. But then Chromebooks come back at the high school setting, and it's almost evenly split. And obviously, the affordability, the maintenance, all of that factors into all of this. So a lot of it makes sense of how it's distributed. And then you've got the other low numbers coming in as a steady low amount throughout, and then the other bring your own devices does spike come high school level. Okay, So if we got all that data about what Maine is doing and how it looks for Maine, the kind of question is, well, how are those devices being used? What's most popular with those devices? Um, how are those devices being served by the products that we have, the software that we have, the apps that we have, things like that. So here, looking at some data here, you've got the Apple App Store back in 2020, quarter one. There was over 470 million downloads. Google Play had 466 million. However, App Store, um, there's only about 75,000 apps labeled as educational in that App Store, whereas um, there are over 200,000 apps in the Google Play Store, which is second just behind games. Um, Now, the Apple App Store is more highly vetted. There is a tougher process to have things approved in there. And Android, Google Play is a little bit more open, which is why they have so many more. Which then leads you to think, and that's what I was doing with this is how watered down are these apps? What are these apps really are? If you got over 200,000 apps labeled as educational, or even 75,000 apps labeled as educational in the Apple App Store, like what are those? How quality are those? Right? We need to be at the point in our instruction and integrating technology that we need to start thinking about these things with a critical eye and start really being a little bit more choosy about things. And to be honest, some of the better products are having more of a pay option to them. There's still plenty of good free ones, or even freemium model, but there's just, obviously there's got to be a whole bunch of just low quality free ones if this is the amount that we're looking at. So the top 10 ones with the Apple App Store here. Okay. We've got, well, you can look at it too. Give you a minute to check it out first. Look it over. But these are as of February of this year. So February of 2022. We've got Toca Life World is the number one app listed as educational in the Apple App Store, followed by Duolingo, Photomath, AirMath, Homework Helper, right? So it's just an interesting. I thought it was pretty interesting, anyways. The top 10 that are listed here, the most popular. How many might be classified as truly educational, and if they are educational, in what aspect? Homework Helper, obviously, that's not as a traditional piece potentially as like an IXL math piece. Then you've got Google Classroom, which is listed as educational, but that's a workflow management, right? That's not necessarily a learning piece. So just an interesting blend, and it's not too dissimilar from um, the Google Play Store here. You can look at that for a minute as well. So obviously there's some similarities. Duolingo, Photomath, pretty interesting. Those are both really high on both of those lists. There's Toka Hair Salon 4 again, right? But then you've got seemingly more educational pieces: ABC Mouse, PBS, Babbel, Lingo Kids, right? So, ironically enough, I think that Google Play, which is vast more apps on there that probably are a little bit less vetted, um, have a little bit more direct educational ties than some of the Apple ones. With the two of the Toka ones um, on there, and then you've got just the information management on here with the Google Classroom and the Remind, which are good. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just interesting that it's the most popular compared to maybe some of the actual learning apps. All right, so all this though is in addition to just the hundreds of educational websites and resources online that you can have. Right, a lot of times there is an app that will have a website as well associated with it, but sometimes they're just websites, um, and there's hundreds of them. So you start getting into a problem of what is too much. You know, um, how do you make sure that it's good quality? So like this Photomath one, right? If you haven't seen it before, it literally like just helps students scan a problem for math, and then um, we'll give them the answer to the problem. They can show them step by step if they want to, but if nothing else, it'll jump them right to the answer here. So you can see this here.
Learning any new subject can be challenging. For many students, that subject is math. Fortunately, Photomath is here to help. Photomath is a new app that not only solves complex math equations, but teaches you how to solve them yourself. It uses your phone's camera to scan the math equation. Within seconds, it spits out the answer. Tap the answer bar to reveal the step-by-step instructions on how to get the solution. Not only does Photomath tell you the answer, it shows its work as well. This week, Photomath released an update that recognizes handwriting. Previously, the app was only able to read printed text. We experimented with several people's handwriting, and Photomath picked it right up. The only problem I came across was with division bars. Photomath had difficulty delineating the order of operations. This was simply remedied by embolding the lines. But if all else fails, Photomath has included a keyboard option for you to manually edit or type any equation that is giving you problems. The update also brings a new math expert system, Photomath Plus, that solves problems like a human would, and walks users through how to solve the problem themselves with a colorful and useful step-by-step guide. The system seems to address the tension between having an app do your homework versus having an app that helps you learn. This new service could also end up being a helpful tool for parents who want to help check if homework is right and navigate their way through incorrect answers. The Photomath Plus service is free through November and will be a paid subscription after that. These new features are available for iOS now and will be coming to Android by the end of the month.
Okay, so again, what are these apps? What are they used for? That are being so popular, and that's got to change how we use them and how we instruct. Being a former math teacher or a math teacher myself, I have to keep these things in mind with my instruction, because all else fails. All the kid has to do is download that on their phone and scan the work if it's just some worksheets, and they can even show their work. Right, it'll show them step by step what to do. Um, so we have to keep in mind how are we going to integrate this technology? How can we use it? How can we leverage it to be productive for us and the students, and knowing that this is the world that they're going to be in. This is the world that they're growing up in. It used to be the old adage with math teachers. You're not going to carry a calculator with you. That's why you need to know these facts. Obviously, that's changed. And now it could be the change of solving just straight problems because they can just scan it. So that's one of the pieces that we have to kind of think about through this whole process and integrating technology. um, and then again, mentioning before about their amount of resources out there and the overwhelming feeling that can come from it.
Learning any
Right, I don't know about you, but you get too many choices out there. You're trying to find resources to use in the classroom or for a lesson. You get so many choices out there. You kind of get bogged down. You kind of get overwhelmed, and you just can't even deal with it. Right? There's too many to sift through. It's not worth your time. It's frustrating. Um, Happens all the time. It not even just online resources, but you have it at stores. You have it out there. Um, Netflix, all right, all over the place. How many times you're scrolling through Netflix, like, oh, can't find anything to watch. Um, I say that too often, honestly, and I'm like, how is that possible? Out of all these streaming services, how is it possible to say that there's nothing to watch? Because again, too many choices can be overwhelming. Um, yeah, I mean, you take all this candy. I don't know about you, but again, you go candy store, toy store, whatever, some treat for my own two kids that I have, like it's a lot of choices. So they're back and forth and they're trying to weigh all of it. Whereas if they had one or two, or if things were vetted, and like, all right, here's how you can make a valid choice. Here's what you to think about. That process helps. So that's what the rest of this series of PD is going to be focused on, right? How do we know if it's any good? How do we know um, if a technology resource will be helpful to us? You have rating systems on Netflix. You've got personal vouching for certain products that you can use on those things, and that's what you go with. You need a plumber or electrician. You're probably going to be able to have somebody word of mouth or reviews that you can look at to see about quality and such. So um, we need to be able to make sure that we're doing that the right way for technology integration, and that's kind of again what the rest of this series is going to point out. Um, what are those ways to evaluate technology? What could we look for? What things do we want to keep in mind to evaluate it and understand how we're going to use it and what's the best way to use it, and what features does it have built in? All of those things we want to take into account. Um, and then we also need to address, as mentioned before, that um, engagement is the number one reason that teachers say how technology has impacted their classroom, which is great, right? Of course, you need students engaged um, in order to right to reach them at a different level, right? They have to be engaged with the work. But what comes with technology here is the common fallacy about engagement um, equality equaling learning, right? It doesn't always happen, right? They can be engaged in a fun game of Kahoot. They can be engaged and pumped up to win and going hard. Um, but depending how it's used, it may or may not be part of a learning process, right? They may just be guessing and clicking a button, getting super lucky, They may be just watching the partners or someone else's and what they're clicking, and they're clicking as well and doing well that way, and they're getting engaged. And maybe they're top of the leaderboard, so they're feeling excited. Um, just things to consider, right? Things to consider about what does engagement truly mean, and that's one of the bigger flaws, bigger problems that we're going to be addressing here with the rest of this PD series is what does true engagement look like? How do you know they're engaged? What is you probably all have that feeling at some point when you're got that awesome lesson going. Students are engaged. Maybe technology is involved. They're asking good questions. There's a discussion going on. It's just that home run type of feeling with the lesson. Um, and then you probably have also those feelings too, where like, you know what, this just didn't hit the mark. Yes, maybe there's technology involved, but it didn't do what I wanted to. Um, and a lot of times it's because maybe students seem engaged, and it seemed like a good idea, but the true outcome that you wanted didn't really align, and the students didn't really learn from that process, that piece that you wanted them to. Um, so that's what we're going to be addressing here again in the next few series. Here's more data about that engagement piece from that similar survey, again from that school that we were able to pull this from. Students are asked to identify and solve authentic problems, and then teachers are asked if about students identifying and solving authentic problems. Students are asked to create, and students are asked think learning is more engaging when using technology. Those are the three questions here, and you can see even though that blue bar was way up high, 88% plus or 80% plus with the how often you use the technology, these pieces of authentic problems, creating, and engaging, um, they're not as balanced, not as skewed as the um, first survey about the technology piece of how often they use it. This one's balanced. This one's a little bit more even, but it's not the strongly agree that makes up 50% of all that surveyed, um, compared to the 80+% of how it's used daily. Not that everything you do every day has to be remarkable. It doesn't have to be out of this world with a engagement or with a technology integration. Um, but you got to make sure that it's there when needed, and then it's serving the true purpose. This one up here, authentic problems, that's a little shocking, about how maybe they never are asked to do that. And it's not just this one school. I mean, that this is a trend overall about the oversaturation of technology in classrooms and in schools, which is great. I mean, how what a cool problem to have, that hey, we have all this technology, but we're not using it effectively enough. That is a step in the right direction to be able to have these resources. But I feel like the time is now to be able to work with those resources and get the most out of them, instead of just a slideshow here or there, or just using the overhead projector. If that's where you need to start, that's great, but we need to try to be able to push beyond those types of interactions and integration, um, to really make it authentic and worthwhile, and get the most out of all these devices. So these are mostly going to be little half-hour snippets, okay? Little chunks for you to be able to digest, at your leisure. You can do it synchronously in the afternoons when I have this scheduled. I thought maybe that some people might be able to get it done during the school day, and maybe they're busy in the evenings. But if you are busy during school day, understandably so, you'll be able to access these asynchronously and still get this information at your own pace whenever. So moving forward here, in the next few, the next three topics, the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about strategies and integration pieces, and how to use them, and then what they are and the best pieces of them. Next week, we'll start with the kind of basic frameworks as people go by them. TPAC and SAMR, those are probably the most common ones that you would hear about. A lot of times you're taking courses on things. These are the two that pop up the earliest. So we'll talk about those as well and what they are. Um, and then we'll be able to talk more about other strategies as well thereafter, and then put it all together. All right, so you'll be able to get your contact hours for this. I appreciate you tuning in. If you need to be able to contact us, please do. My name is Rob Dominic. My email is robert.dominic@maine.gov. Feel free to ask some questions. You'll be able to get the links to tune in next time, and then you'll also be able to see, if doing this asynchronously, you'll be able to see a form to be able to ask a couple questions about this session, and then a link to get your certification hours afterwards. Okay, thank you.